March of the Machines is the latest in the Phyrexian Invasion pseudo-block, and in it we visit just about every plane we visited in the last decade. From Amonkhet to Zendikar, the Phyrexians have their sights set on completing the multiverse, and with this set, we have hundreds of brand new cards just waiting to get their spotlight in the Commander format. To make things a little easier for you, I've made this video to discuss the 10 cards that I think are best for the Commander format from March of the Machine. But as a small caveat, I will not be adding any legendary cards or battles to this list. Legendary creatures and the like are often far more pushed than their non-legendary counterparts, and so rather than just have the 5 Praetors clog up the list and a few other battles, we're going to make that little stipulation right out the gate to avoid making this list kind of boring. Anyway, let's go. Starting our list is a white spell actually, Surge of Salvation. This spell costs 1 white mana for an instant that gives you and permanents you control hexproof until the end of turn. It also prevents all damage that black or red sources would deal to creatures you control this turn. This reminds me of a bit of a white shifted variation of Veil of Summer in protecting your cards at instant speed. I think this might find a home in some decks that are looking to protect their board against targeted removal who unfortunately might not be on better protection. I don't think this is going to have the same level of impact as the aforementioned Veil of Summer, but I think at least for me, I have a few mono white stacks lists that are going to want to use this to protect our key cards from any sorts of removal. Guardian of Ghirapur is in our number 9 slot, being in some aspects a take on the Restoration Angel Blink strategy. As it enters the battlefield, this 3/3 gets to exile up to 1 other creature or artifact you control, which will then return to your battlefield at the next end step. I think this is a little bit more splashable than Restoration Angel, being 1 mana cheaper, but decks like Brago, Rune, Elish Norn that are going to look to abuse this card's abilities are really going to appreciate an additional flicker effect. I think flicker effects are an amazing means to combo off, letting you just reset cards and get additional value out of them, like Mana Rocks, Mana Dorks, and just the activated abilities of creatures in general. Doomscar Warrior is at number 8. This 4/3 for 4 mana with backup 1 trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player or a battle, you can look at that many cards from the top of your library, you can reveal a creature or land from among those cards to add to your hand, and then the rest get randomly placed to the bottom of your library. Backup is a pretty neat ability. When it enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature. If it's another creature, that creature then gains the rest of the abilities printed on the card with backup. So if we put a counter onto another card, it gains both trample and the combat damage triggered ability. So I think this is, at least at the time of recording, grossly undervalued. It is a warrior creature, meaning a deck like Najeela will love this card. Najeela is often built as an aggro deck looking to attack with its creatures to go off and win, and this card will give you opportunities to draw into more answers and threats. At number 7 is Deeproot Wayfinder. This is a 2/3 for 2 mana, which is something I've been seeing a lot more of recently. It's good stats, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player or battle, you surveil 1, and then you may return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. This is a really interesting card for land-based strategies like Gitrog or Windgrace who are going to be utilizing lands that are in your graveyard. This is also a merfolk for you tribal-loving folks. OG Tatiova triggers just upon landfall, and so this card's ability will, at the end of the day, just let you draw a card, gain 1 life, and you have a land from your graveyard back to the battlefield. At number 6, we have Tribute to the World Tree, a 3 mana enchantment that has a single triggered ability. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if its power is 3 or greater, you draw a card. Otherwise, you put 2 +1/+1 counters onto it. This is going to be the basis of quite a few infinite combos going down the road. Murderous Redcap and a Sack Outlet comes to mind. Lets you get the Redcap into the battlefield, it'll burn an opponent for 2, you then sacrifice it to, say, Carrion Feeder. The Persist trigger activates, returning the Redcap to the battlefield with a -1/-1 counter on it. It's enter the battlefield, and the Tribute's abilities both go onto the stack, and then we'll put 2 +1/+1 counters onto the Redcap. The creature's ETB then resolves, and we burn an opponent for 3. We then sacrifice it again, and because the 2+1/+1 counters on it cancel out the single -1/-1 counter on it, the persist ability triggers again, making the cycle continue. Decks like Corvold can really take advantage of this, even adding a card draw engine into the mix to really begin churning out your deck. Chrome Host Sea Shark is at number 5. This Phyrexian Shark costs 3 mana, 2 of any color and 1 blue, for a 2/4 with flying. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. Incubating is a new ability. It creates an incubator artifact token with X +1/+1 counters on it that has the ability to pay 2 mana of any color, transform this artifact into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature token. This has so much potential. It's a sizable body, which makes it pretty sturdy on its own. It also lets you build up a board state of artifact tokens, which means this is absolutely going to find its way into some blue artifact lists like Urza. This triggering after every non-creature spell means that you can produce a lot of tokens just with your mana rocks. And I think that we should be looking at this card as less of a creature token card and more of an artifact production engine. Number 3 is Into the Fire. I will say this, I love the 57 flavors of wheels out there, and every so often we get a new one that just adds to the pool. 3 mana for this sorcery that has 2 modes. You can either shock each creature, Planeswalker, and battle, or put any number of cards from your hand to the bottom of your library, and then draw that many cards +1. So this is the modality that I adore in Commander. You have the potential of a board wipe, and on top of that, if you need to, this can do a nice little hand reset that it nets neutral on card advantage. That flexibility is what will absolutely come in handy, and while I've yet to decide where I stand with battles in Commander, I think that having that versatility to deal with these might make this something to pick up sooner or later should that card type start to find a home in the format. And number 2 is Phyrexian Censor. White has really become the magic color of Rule of Law, getting the better stacks effects to slow games down. This card brings with it a unique Rule of Law effect, along with a tap down effect to keep opponents off tempo for that one non-Phyrexian spell they're casting per turn. In most casual games of Magic, building a deck to break parity with this card might seem pretty easy considering we now have 457 cards that are considered Phyrexians, either by their own printing or by the Phyrexian creature type update. We see cards like this in Aethersworn Canonist, literally Rule of Law. I mean, heck, we got Thalia and the Gitrog monster who have completely gotten stacks put all over them, though I feel like this being included in a Thalia and Froggy deck might be a little bit ironic. At 3 mana though, this can easily be rushed out with some proper mana ramp and acceleration, which could spell trouble for opponents who aren't on any Phyrexians. And finally, at number 1 is Hoarding Broodlord. It's an 8 mana 7/6 with Convoke and Flying. When it enters the battlefield, you can tutor for a card that gets exiled face down. For as long as it remains exiled, you may play it. Spells that you cast from exile also gain Convoke. So perhaps this is my bias poking through, but Keurig and Prosper will love this card. Keurig loves the ability to tutor for cards that 3 black mana pips are nothing. It'll help us turbo out our winning combo, and of course, Prosper is literally the commander from Cast from Exile abilities, giving us treasure tokens every time we cast a spell from exile. And this creature also giving your spells in exile Convoke means that we can now look to build up our impulsive card draw to really pop off, and we can use the creatures in play to help get the rest of them out of exile. It might seem like a hefty mana in value at 8 mana, but if you build it correctly and you're putting it in the proper decks, this can be a fierce threat to sit at the top of your curve. It also having Convoke itself means that it can literally be cast for free should you have 8 creatures sitting in play, making this way easier to cast. So, what cards do you like from March of the Machines? Are there any cards that are you thinking are going to be doing a splash in the Commander format? Let's talk about it in the comments section below. If you like this video and would like to see more, remember to subscribe and like the video. Both are very much appreciated. And as always, I'll see you next time.